Alright, here we are on page 3 of 2.4. We're in a section called Formulas and Percent, and for this section of the notes we're focusing on percents. And at the bottom of page 2 we talked about the steps of how you convert from a decimal to a percent, and then also from a percent to a decimal. And you can either memorize those steps or you can come up with some sort of memory trick. So this is what I use to remember if I ever get stuck, like on a test situation. This is what I use, is the alphabetical order. If you think about the alphabet, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, it goes on and on. Let's pick it up here. M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, keeps going. Okay, here you see D, here you see P. If I go from a decimal to a percent, if I have a decimal and I need to convert it to a percent, okay, I look at the letters here. I'm going from D to P, from D to P. And if you think about the alphabet, to get from D to P, I would have to go to the right, okay? Alphabetically, I would travel to the right, which is what you have to do with the decimal. You have to move it 2 places to the right. It's always 2 places. The question is whether it's to the right or to the left, because percent represents per 100, for every 100. So we're either moving it 2 place values to the right or 2 place values to the left. So decimal to percent, you'd go to the right to get from D to P in terms of the alphabet. So we would move our decimal to the right to go from a decimal version to a percent version, 2 places to the right. Same thing here, percent back to decimal. In other words, from P to D, this is going backwards through the alphabet. So we'd have to go from P to D. We would have to move to the left. So alphabetically, we would be traveling to the left. And again, in terms of converting, we would be moving 2 places. Sorry, I didn't mean to cross that out. My pen slipped as I did it. So let's look at a couple examples, and there'll be a couple tries for you here. Okay, number 28. We're going to either be expressing the percent as a decimal if they give us a percent. If they give us a decimal, we'll end as a percent. Make sure that you add that percent sign at the end because you want to end as a percent, and make sure that you remove the percent sign on the ones where you're finishing as a decimal version. Okay, so you can't have this, if you're converting, you can't have the percent sign in both places or have it not be there both times. It has to be on one side or the other, the start or the finish, depending on what you're being asked to do. So in this case, percent to decimal, we've got a percent, we're headed to a decimal. That has to go backwards through the alphabet, so we're headed 2 spaces to the left. If you don't see the decimal, it's understood to be right here, okay? So if you can't see it, this is where the decimal is to start with, right to the right of the number. 83%, the decimal is right to the right of 3. And then we're going to move it 2 spaces to the left because we need to go from percent to decimals. We're headed to the left in terms of alphabet here. So 1, 2. And it lands right here. I would recommend that you put a 0 as a placeholder so we don't lose track of that decimal. Our final version is 0.83. We're going from percent to decimal. It started with a percent sign. There is no percent sign here. 0.83 is the decimal version of 83%. 0.83 literally means 83 hundredths. 83 per 100 is a way to say 83%. Okay, so that's how it all kind of loops around together. Let's look at number 42. Now we're doing decimal to a percent. Now we're going from decimal to a percent. If you think in terms of the alphabet, we're headed to the right. And again, 2 spaces because it all has to do with per 100, 2 place values. So here is our starting point, 5.38. We're going to move it to the right 2 spaces. There's where it lands. So I'm here at 5, 3, 8. The decimal's on the right, so I can either say 0.0 or just leave it because it ended up to the right of the number. There's nothing else to hold in place, so the decimal value, the decimal point is no longer needed. We're going from a decimal to a percent, so this is 538%. So 5 and 38 hundredths, or 5.38, is 538%. It brings new meaning to that whole mixed number thing. 5 and 38 100ths. I have 5 wholes, I have 5 completes, 5 100% of something, and then another 38 left over, 38%. So 538% is what that converts to. Okay, let's do number 34 here. We've got 8%. We're going from percent to decimal. In terms of the alphabet, P is to the right, D is to the left, so we would be headed to the left with our decimal. We don't see it here. That means it's there, you just can't see it. It's 8.0. So it's here. We're going to move it to the left 2 spots. 1, 2. Notice once I move once, I'm at the end of my numbers. So that second place needs a filler. It needs that 0 here. So I've got my point. 0, 8 is the decimal version of 8%. So we start at 8%. We don't see the decimal. We put it in at the right. We move it to the left. We give it that spot. I also put a number in front as a placeholder so that we don't lose track of that decimal point along the way. It was a percent. Now it's a decimal. We do not need the percent sign anymore. What is this literally? This is 8 100ths. That's 8 per 100. That's 8%. Okay, so there's our decimal version of 0.08 is the decimal version of 8%. Let's try number 40 here. Or you can watch this one and then copy it down for yourself. They're giving us a decimal. We're going to change it to percent. So we're going from decimal to percent. In terms of the alphabet, as a little shortcut to remember, we're going from D to P, and so that heads to the right in terms of the alphabet. So I'm going to move 2 spaces to the right. Here's where I'm starting from. I'm going to go to the right. 1, 2, that's where I land. I landed right in front of the 8. So 0.8. Again, I have a habit of putting that 0 in front of the decimal just to make sure I don't lose track of that decimal or drop it along the way. And I'm going from decimal to a percent. It's okay to have a decimal percent. Many of you are going to looked at your grades in terms after that first exam, and you saw that it was, you might had a 80.3%. It's okay to have a decimal involved in your percent. What the percent sign says is that this is for every 100. So out of every 100, you don't even have one of those 100. You have 8/10 of that 100. You actually have a smaller version than just 1% here. So just move your decimal 2 places to the left or the right, depending on which direction you're going, and then attach the percent sign if you're landing at a percent. Remove the percent sign if you're landing at a decimal. Okay. I'll readjust the video for bottom of the page where you can do some tries, and then we'll look through the helpful reminder and then kind of talking about some of the whys behind this. All right, we'll see you there.